There's actually a whole expansion plot next door to this one, the same size as Super Nintendo World. So technically you could double this whole land if you wanted to. I'm here at Epic Universe to talk about possible future expansions to this brand new park. We'll be talking about new things opening in the short term and what new worlds we could see opening in the long term. Plus, what operational changes might we see in the coming years? All that and more in today's vlog update. After following the progress and development of Epic Universe over several years, we've seen where the expansion plots are, where new expansion plots have been, added as things got canceled or moved around. But it's really interesting to see now that the park is opening, where they'll decide to build what first and what they decide they need based on operations to build next. Well, we kind of know what is next because they've already built this. This large structure, kind of near the front of the park, was permitted as Phase 2 dining. It was actually designed as like a food court building, but they completely scrapped that, redesigned the building last minute, and even though it was listed as Phase 2, they were able to get the exterior done in time for the opening of Epic Universe. Instead of being a food court with different quick service windows, though, it looks like it's been redesigned as two separate restaurants with shared seating and a shared kitchen in the back. But by all accounts, it's still empty inside. So it's definitely not going to open with the park. Universal hasn't even announced this dining location when they announced all the other dining locations, which should tell you that they're not planning to open it anytime soon. They have, however, put out umbrellas and chairs and tables so that people can sit out here and enjoy some of the kiosks around. But speaking of kiosks, there are actually two kiosks recently added in front of this location, one on the right and one over there on the left. And in talking with team members around the area, it sounds like one of these restaurants will be Italian, one of these will be Mexican food, and they'll actually be serving Mexican food and Italian food, supposedly, at these little kiosks, which I imagine could be like a little test kitchen thing to try out some of the menu items or at least the styles of food and utilize the space for dining, even though the building itself isn't ready. As for when the building itself will be ready, from talking to people around the park, it sounds like it's not going to be ready till January. Although I wouldn't be surprised to see them try to get it open in time for the holiday season, which would certainly add a lot more dining capacity here to Celestial Park in the center of Epic Universe. Why they would need that much dining capacity, we'll talk more about that later. Looking beyond Celestial Park for a moment, if I was to put money on it, I would say out of all the worlds that could get an expansion first, Super Nintendo World is definitely the most likely. Super Nintendo World is absolutely packed the first half of the day. It's where everyone goes to first. It's got the early park admission for hotel guests, so by the time you get here, it's already full. The lines are already 2 hours long, and it's where families are coming to Epic Universe for. So of course, it makes sense to add some capacity here and help spread out the crowds who are already coming to this world first anyway. There are some rumors and some new speculation on what could be coming next. If you saw my last vlog from Epic Universe, you may have seen me talk about everyone speculating about Zelda coming to this park, mainly driven by the nods and references here in the Superstar store. Because surely if there's characters here in these stained glass windows, a new land must be coming, right? I wouldn't be so sure. They got Earl the Squirrel over in the Christmas store, but that doesn't mean Earl the Squirrel's getting a world. After all, the story for Celestial Park is that the Celestians figured out a way to travel between worlds and bring some of the different artifacts from the different worlds to populate the architectural styles and the little nods. I mean, there's a Waturi Punch over at Celestiki. That's the people from Volcano Bay. It doesn't mean they're going to add Volcano Bay to Epic Universe. Now, where would an expansion go? There's actually a whole expansion plot next door to this one, the same size as Super Nintendo World. So technically you could double this whole land if you wanted to. Looking at aerial photography by BioReconstruct, we can get a sense of where this extra land is located in between Nintendo and Monsters, and that it's currently, or it has been used for staging of equipment and vehicles for the building of Epic Universe. But as that wraps up, they've been clearing the side of the land closest to Nintendo. And you may remember there was a rumor first reported by Screamscape several years ago that the first expansion for Super Nintendo World could be Luigi's Mansion. And I know a lot of people are speculating on Zelda coming, but if we look back at that rumor, maybe, just maybe, we could connect Luigi's Mansion to Super Nintendo World through a side portal entrance, just like Donkey Kong Country. In fact, permits actually show this wall not existing. This one over here by the freestyle machines may very well be able to pop out and create a new warp pipe that leads to a mini land outside of the main Super Nintendo World without connecting it to Celestial Park. You may have even seen an Easter egg for the Poltergust, the ghost vacuum from Luigi's Mansion inside of the Mario Kart ride queue. I wouldn't read too much into that because not only is it here at Epic Universe, but it's also in the Hollywood queue and in the Japan queue. But still, an interactive ride that uses something like the Poltergust would be a good family attraction, which Epic Universe could use at least one more. And it could be completely unrelated, but there is a new notice of commencement that was just filed this week with Orange County for a company called Falcons Attractions, who has not worked on anything in Epic Universe as far as I can tell. And Falcons Attractions, they do all kinds of theme park ride and entertainment venue stuff here in Orlando. I did notice one of the things they do is interactive blasters for interactive experiences. So perhaps, maybe, just maybe, this could already be the start of paperwork for some kind of new expansion, or it could be for repairs or something for one of the existing attractions. We don't know, but maybe. Now, theoretically, this new expansion could take place essentially behind Pizza Moon in that expansion plot. But if it's just one ride they're adding to Super Nintendo World, perhaps we could see room left over in this expansion plot for something else to be added here. Looking again from the air, it appears that this expansion plot is split down the middle. I don't know if it was for staging reasons or if it's intended to be split into two parcels for two different types of things. On the one side, they've been staging things, which I've noticed some of the boom arms have started to move to the other side or even behind the monsters area. And the other side has gotten some modular offices. And it's my theory they've been adding offices where they're not planning to build anything anytime soon, moving them away from areas where they are. So rumors for what to do with this strip of land that might be left over after a Luigi ride could be the Zelda expansion everyone's expecting, or an old rumor was to put the Waterworld show there and give it its own portal entrance in Celestial Park. Because whatever does go into this expansion plot on this side definitely looks like it could get its own portal right here, which is between Nintendo and Dark Universe. And heading into Dark Universe, we're going to talk about possible expansions within each of the worlds of Epic Universe. Fire, 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 fire. Located at the very back of Darkmoor, in between Frankenstein Manor and the Burning Blade Tavern, there is a possible entrance to a future expansion. And if you look at the permit documents, this is the only world within Epic Universe to explicitly list this section inside of another world as Phase 2. So what we might be seeing right here, between here and here, could be a whole new attraction entrance. And it's pretty fitting that these trees look a little swampy. Of course, this expansion has long been rumored to be a Creature from the Black Lagoon boat ride, an indoor boat ride experience that kind of mixes together Jaws and a haunted house and maybe the Shanghai Pirates attraction for screen walls that make it look like the water goes on forever. Either way, it's been a long time rumor, but if you look at aerial photos, they have seeded this expansion plot behind Dark Universe. The reason they do this is so that there's not dirt flying around in the wind and getting in all the guests' faces. and probably because they're not planning to build anything in this expansion plot for quite some time. And it's not just grass over in the expansion plot. They do have some modular offices back there as well. And like I said, my theory is if you built offices there, you're probably not going to build a ride there next. Heading into the wizarding world of Harry Potter Ministry of Magic, this world actually ended up having the largest expansion plot, although it wasn't intended to be that way. Heading off to the right side of the land, opposite of the Battle at the Ministry ride, there is this little dead end. And there's not much to do down here. There's a little bar and some photo ops, and of course the interactive wand experiences in the windows. But that's because this was supposed to be the entrance to the land's second ride. You may recognize this photo op here as the elevator to get into the French Ministry of Magic in the second Fantastic Beasts film. And the French Ministry of Magic is probably where this ride would have taken place, with maybe an entrance here or here, because behind this building is a massive empty space. And we have seen permits back all the way in 2019 that showed what the building for this second ride would have been like. It was massive, and it was right behind here. After a brief pause in construction due to the pandemic, once things got the ball rolling again, we noticed that this building was now missing from the permits, just erased. Rumored to be a flying broomstick VR attraction, or whatever it was going to be, it was gone from the plans. In fact, the only thing that kept the building number out of all of the stuff that was supposed to go behind these facades was this wand shop. The Cosma Casuar wand shop is technically the same building number that the French Ministry ride would have been. And besides deleting the entire building from the plans, the only real change they had to make was putting these turrets here for forced perspective on stilts, because originally they were intended to sit on top of the show building for this big ride. What does that mean for the future? There's actually a plot of land here the same size and scale as the Battle at the Ministry ride, including the queue. And if you've been inside that ride, if you've seen inside that queue, you know it is massive. It is the largest indoor attraction here at Epic Universe, and they have enough room to build another one right here. What they choose to build still remains to be seen. And just like over at Dark Universe, they've seeded this entire expansion plot with grass. So I don't think they'll be building anything just yet. Heading now into How to Train Your Dragon Isle of Berk, I do believe this is the only world that technically doesn't have any kind of expansion pad. It does have a little bit of space over in the corner. Talking to people who work here at Epic Universe, I think they all consider this world to be the most complete, the most fleshed out, and with the most diverse collection of attractions. So it doesn't need an expansion. And when people are talking about an expansion for Isle of Berk, they probably are thinking about is this little plot of land just here to the left of the theater show. Currently, this is the area where the Dragon drones are launched from, so it's just a little paved lot. But that's not a lot of space. Barely enough space for an entire attraction, let alone the queue and anything else you need logistically backstage to support a new ride. I mean, they could make it work. They might even eat into a little bit of the parking lot if they had to, but I just don't see it happening, at least not anytime soon. I guess the bottom line is when you're talking about the 4 themed worlds that already exist at Epic Universe, I don't see any of them getting a new expansion inside of their existing worlds first. Nintendo might get an expansion to the plot next to it, and maybe Harry Potter needs an expansion more than the other 2 since it only has the 1 ride so far. But that doesn't mean that there's not more space to expand Epic Universe in general. Here in the center of Celestial Park, in the middle of Epic Universe, there is a future entrance to what could be the largest portal in the park. Here to the left of Stardust Racers is what is essentially a path to nowhere. Besides the entrance here to Stardust Racers and the restrooms over across the way, this path dead ends just to a backstage gate. On the other side of this backstage gate is a plot of land for future expansion that is over 20 acres large. That's close to the entire size of Celestial Park itself. Earmarked for future expansion, this massive space is being saved, in my opinion, until they get a huge property. I think they were blindsided on what to do when they finally got the rights to Harry Potter and had to re-theme part of their existing theme park at Islands of Adventure. What if they had an expansion plot big enough to just add, from the start, a whole new world? A world for something as epic as Harry Potter, or Lord of the Rings, or maybe a future NBC Universal property that they haven't even invented yet. 10, 20 years from now, when that property finally comes out of nowhere, they'll be like, oh, we have that gigantic expansion plot and room for a portal right there in our park. Or they could split it into 2 parcels and make 2 completely separate worlds over the course of the next 20 years. For now, you may notice there's a very large tent structure that has been built at the beginning of this expansion plot. And this massive tent here will be used for the grand opening celebration for media. And after that, permits say it'll be used for special events and team member training. It's a semi-permanent structure, sort of like the World Showplace Pavilion that was originally developed for the Millennium Celebration at Epcot and is still there now 25 years later. It's something you can do temporary events in. It's permanent enough to leave up, but temporary enough to strike when you're ready to build something there. And while it is a large tent structure, it's still nothing compared to the amount of space behind it in the full plot. Another thing I'd like to talk about isn't necessarily in addition to the park, but definitely an operational change that I could see happening maybe in the next year or so. Stop me if you've heard this one before, but if they were to do something like an open hub, they might need turnstiles here in all the portals. Turnstiles that would go here. These sockets are actually the same as the ones at the turnstiles at the front of the park. And you can find plates like these inside of all of the portals into all of the worlds at Epic Universe. Now, whether or not that means the entire hub of Celestial Park is open to all guests, or that maybe they do some extra hours evening events where you're allowed to stay inside of the hub if you don't have an extra hours ticket, but then if you have an extra hours ticket, you show your pass to get into the worlds and do the rides. Or maybe they let hotel guests into the park after 6 p.m., but they keep the rides open for anyone who has a day ticket. And they just wheel out these turnstiles and plug them into these sockets. There's a lot of possibilities on why they would have installed these at all the portals. I mean, maybe the open hub idea, which we've heard about since before this park was even announced, was something they were going to do, and it's just baked into the plans. Or maybe when they do corporate buyouts of the individual worlds, you'll have to show your special event ticket to get in there, and everyone else is relegated to the places that are open. And if you were going to have a free to open hub and tickets required to do the rides, it would make sense to have turnstiles here at the entrance to Stardust Racers. And they do. And that's not all, because there is one more expansion pad for Epic Universe, and it is attached to Celestial Park, right at the front of the park. Directly across from the Atlantic Seafood Restaurant, there's the entrance to the park over there. Over here is another expansion pad. Looking at the permits and listening to some of the rumors, one idea is to put some kind of multi-purpose stage here. Even before Epic Universe was announced, there was a rumor for having a Broadway-style theater attached to the park that could have access to the parking lot without getting a ticket. That would allow people inside the park to go see the show, but also people from outside the park to go see the show. And this location really fits that rumor. But then again, if we have some kind of open hub after 6 p.m., maybe everyone could come in and go through the front entrance to this possible theater. Either way, looking at aerial photos of this expansion pad, which is on the other side of Super Nintendo World from the larger expansion pad, we can see that it is just big enough to add some kind of multi-purpose stage or soundstage building. My theory is that it could be something for holidays, because I think holidays, starting next year, could be big for Epic Universe. Something we haven't talked about on the channel in a very long time is that there's actually plans for 2 parade buildings at the back of this park. One on the left side of the Helios Grand Hotel and one on the right side. And even recent permits still show future parade building on the left side of the Helios Grand Hotel. The park itself, surprisingly, is set up for parades. So it's my theory that special holiday parades, special holiday shows, special holiday offerings throughout Celestial Park, turning it into almost a festival park, could be in the future. And by the future, I mean 2026. Because while there might not be a new ride opening next year here at this park, one way to get locals especially after they add the annual pass upgrade to all our annual passes into this park again, is by offering Epcot-style festivals or Magic Kingdom-style after-hours events. But we'll just have to wait until next year to see if that pans out. That is going to do it for this vlog update here inside of Epic Universe. But stay tuned because we'll be covering the grand opening of this park next week. And if you're going to be here grand opening day on May 22nd, make sure to set your alarm clocks early because we're lining up as soon as they let us. Thanks for watching. See you next time.